Welcome to Policing TV. I'm joined here in Sussex by the Sussex Chief Constable and the first female Sussex Chief Constable ever, Chief Constable Jo Shiner. Jo, thank you again for welcoming Policing TV here to Sussex. We're going to now talk about your policing career, including let's start with what led you to join the police.
So I came from a public service background, and as much as my father was in the RAF, my mother was a teacher. So I think I was brought up with that ethos, and it is really important to me that I do serve the public. It makes a real difference to me when I think that we can make people's lives a little bit better sometimes, or when indeed we can, within policing, catch those people who are making other people's lives worse, really. So that truly is why I joined. And I think because I had an experience, obviously, with the police when my father was killed, I could kind of really see how actually that interaction could make it a lot better for the family and those involved, or actually it could make it a lot worse for them as well. So it's always been very, very important to me to try to give the very best service and to go the extra mile for those people that I've had interactions with during my service.
So you were looking for a public service role, and was policing the only public service role that you considered, or did it go beyond that?
So originally I applied to join the army, and then for a variety of reasons I ended up with policing, and very, very happily so. And it was only because policing weren't advertising at the time that I went for the army. But I'm delighted. I'm a huge believer in fate, and I'm delighted that policing has been a career that I've been able to enjoy for, over 31 years now.
So you joined Norfolk Constabulary, and tell us about those early years. Were they sort of completely without challenge or incident? I strongly suspect not. I strongly suspect that there were some challenging times as well as some really good times.
Of course there were, and I think there remains challenging times in policing. I think that's what policing's about. But I was incredibly fortunate that I joined a team in Kings Lynn in Norfolk. In fact, that was my first posting, where for the first 2 years you actually did footbeat in those days. If you were lucky, then your sergeant picked you up in the car if it was raining really heavily. But you were properly taught the beat craft and the street craft, that professional curiosity that I think then stands you in really good stead as a police officer going forwards. And look, I thoroughly enjoy policing. I love policing, but there is no doubt whatsoever that there are those times where sometimes they're sad times that you simply can't do anything for a family because of some circumstances, or you do attend really quite tragic incidents, and you know that the only thing you can do is to try to make that tragic incident a little bit better for those who are involved.
Do you look back on any of that time in Norfolk as particularly formative to your subsequent career, not just in Norfolk, but also in Kent and here now as the Chief Constable of Sussex?
Yes, certainly. I think it's been really valuable actually policing in 3 different forces, because I think each force, although they're rural forces, Norfolk, Kent and Sussex, of course very different in terms of what they have, but very different cultures, very different styles, very different policing models. And I think what that gives you as you go through your career is the ability to be able to see what works and what doesn't work, and to be able to develop your own concept, really, of how policing could be delivered. But I also think that we police in a really complex society. So when I first joined, people weren't filming what you did, they weren't recording what you did. You didn't have some of those challenges that I think you do have now. And there's huge value in that recording, in that filming, in that transparency. But I also do think that when we look at the digital developments that have taken place both within our society and within policing, I think that it has created a huge amount of complexity and certainly a lot more work for prosecutions.
So I know from filming with many officers over the past few years and a long career in policing that there is much to recommend policing as a career for youngsters. What sorts of recruits are you ideally currently looking for? Here in the UK, there are some real challenges in recruitment. I'm just wondering, what sorts of individuals are you looking for to become outstanding police officers?
I'm really clear. We're looking for people who've got common sense, who have got integrity, and have got a real passion for policing. That professionalism and the diligence that they bring when they're dealing with an incident, with a victim and with a family is really important to me. And so it is that keenness and that energy that we're looking for. We're really fortunate in Sussex that we do happily recruit the numbers that we need to recruit, and we have a good number of people who want to join us. I have a brilliant head of recruitment, Adrian Rutherford, and he leads a lot of that work brilliantly with his team. And also we try to attract, if you like, recruits who are going to be those officers of the future. Because when I go out on patrol, normally the response officer that I go out with hasn't even been born when I joined the job. And they take great delight in telling me that. But I think that's really exciting because they are brilliant on our mobile data terminals. They're brilliant with technology, far better than I am because, of course, they've been brought up with it. So I'm really optimistic about the future. I think we've got a really exciting group of people who are coming through, whether they're officers, whether they're staff, whether they're volunteers, who are really keen to make a difference, and I'm really optimistic about it. And as you can tell, passionate about policing still.
Well, let's look to the future then. Some of the challenges that those who, as you describe them, they weren't born at the time you first joined. But what sorts of challenges do you see ahead for policing? The sorts of challenges that you're beginning, perhaps, you and your colleagues beginning to respond to, deal with, prepare for, and that those who are perhaps young in service, a future, whether it be Sussex police officer out there at the moment who sits in this office in the future, or maybe from outside Sussex, you don't know, you came from Kent and prior to that Norfolk. What sorts of challenges are you dealing with now, starting to deal with, and that you think will be challenges for policing in the coming years?
I think that the criminal justice system presents challenges to policing. I think the complexity of it, particularly with an increasing reliance upon digital evidence and evidence being, within people's phones, computers, and the expertise that is needed and required to be able to make sure that we are presenting that evidence with integrity, with transparency. So I think that's an increasing challenge. I also think that actually the tolerances within society are starting to influence some of the way in which we are policing. I'll give you an example. So if you look at driving whilst under the influence of drink and drugs, the prevalence of drug driving now is really increasing. And we are particularly seeing that in young people who probably are more likely to use recreational drugs and think that that's okay. Whereas, of course, we know that the impact on driving is quite significant. So I think we really do need to, as a police service generally, be very agile, swift, and very much evidence-based in terms of how we try to influence legislation in the future and how we influence that technology which will enable us to enforce some of that legislation and obviously, prevent deaths.
Jo, you've been very generous with your time this morning. Thank you so much. I know that you have some real policing challenges on your plate today, and you have done this week. Can I thank you from me, from Policing TV, and on behalf of our audience for your time, and wish you well in the work that you're to do today, tomorrow, and in the remainder of your tenure as Chief Constable.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.